This on this side has this, I forget what Larry DeRocher called it, but it's a special nut. They're chrome plated and it holds the people that have a mirror there, get a mirror there. And if you squeeze too much, I guess you can deform the metal around this. So this actually bottoms out and I'll have to dig the bolt out. But this piece goes in first because you can't get this in after you put your rubber in. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that on down, and it's held in with two chrome-headed screws. And I'm going to get that pulled in. One thing I mentioned is I went in, we're going to put, this is where the little flap goes that holds the window lock in place. And I tapped those holes, I tapped these holes here. I did have this recad plated. There's a couple other things we'll get to, but the shaft here on the, I don't know if you can see that, but the shaft on the actual window, that's got chrome on it and all kinds of stuff, and it gets real dirty and yicky in there. And if you don't take that off, it's awful hard to get the adjustment right on the, well, you screw it all up. But anyway, it's important to get those holes cleaned out before you start this operation. Okay, I've got both screws in there and pulled that up tight. You can see my hole goes all the way through there. The other thing I do to my screwdrivers is I take them, you know, American screwdrivers have such a fine tip that sometimes they booger up the bolts, or not the bolts, but the screws. And I take the end of it and put it on a grinder and flatten it out, and I make it a little bit thicker if you go up just a little bit. And then they fit in there real good and snug so you won't booger up, especially the chrome plated one, because you really notice it. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put this in here, and this is the seal, and it came from replacement parts and part of the kit, and the kit's really good. You'll have to pull this in and out, and I do not glue these. Sometimes a part of them will tend to pop out when you open the window and you're driving. I wait and kind of see, but if you put them in there, and usually with me it's a long time before I get the car back on the road, but they seem to snap in there and seal pretty good. So I don't really recommend starting out with glue, and maybe touch it up a little bit later, because otherwise I had these polished and that glue kind of messes them up. Okay, I've worked this in all the way around and it pops in pretty nice, and I start in this corner right here and then work my way around. But I kind of pull it back up here, and the reason being you have to put that shaft in there and it's hard to get that hole matched up. And the shaft I'm talking about's this one. And that baby will go in there like that. Now before I put that in there, I'm going to shove this piece of foam, and you're asking, well, why in the world is he putting that piece of heavy foam? Oh, by the way, I should mention this. I put it there, you'll see there's a little square thing when you get your seals, but I kind of a little piece of heavy foam, stick it in that hole, then I shove a ice pick up there and make a hole in it so I get the hole lined up to where this goes. And then I just work that on through there. It's a heavy foam I use. I don't want to say it's home window insulation, but that's what it is, and it works really good. And I didn't have any black, so I'm going to use gray. And you know what? When I'm done, I'm going to get a little Sharpie, and I'm going to make it black. But you got to work this down in through the hole there, and I've got my selfie stick sitting there. I don't know if I'll be able to do this without moving my selfie stick. But, oh, there she goes. So I'm going to work that on in there. Okay, you'll see I've got that slid on in there, and a very important part there is there's a 1/4-inch ball, and mine were a little bit bad, so I went to the hardware store, and you could buy those things. They're just a hardened bearing. that goes into a little clip here, so I'm going to force this out, and then I'm going to work this little ball back in there. I actually shut it in the rubber, so I've got to open it up first, and I'm going to get that in there. And I'm going to pull it on shut. That came out. Oh, I didn't have it pushed in all the way. That makes sense. Got the bottom end good. And let me get that in there and push down a little bit to hold it. There we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and shut that, but that's got that held tight. And the next thing we're going to do is insert the little pin here. And by the way, these pins, I just went and got a hardened steel piece of metal, you know, from a hardware store. Well, that was a hobby store. And I cut me a new one. These are a pain getting out. You grab them with pliers and stuff. They usually come out pretty easy, but you tear them up a little bit getting them out. So we've got to put our pin in there. And then I'll get into the next part of it here. Okay, this is pretty simple, so I'm going to go through it quick. There's a specialty washer, then there's a fiber disc, what they call a friction disc. I cut it out of a piece of upholstery webbing. There's a spacer, which it's got to go inside that, so I went ahead and put it inside that. You got two brass washers on each side on the inside, then you got these friction plate riders. Then you got standard washers, standard bolts. You got a star washer, you got a cup washer, you got a spacer, and I replaced my spacers. They were a little bit rusty. I found some of similar size, almost exactly the same size at a hardware store. Spring, specialty washer, standard washer, 2 half nuts. And that all goes on here, so we're going to get that on. Okay. We got the washer, we got the spacer and the friction disc. We got the 2 brass pieces there, and we'll get the 2 go on the inside and 1 goes on the outside. Oh, by the way, these have a little bit of arch to them, so the arch goes that way. But that goes there, 2 brass washers, at least I think they're brass. Then that spacer will fit right down in between that, but get that one started. And then we're going to go ahead and put the 2 brass ones on the inside and get that started. Like that. Okay. Okay, got those tightened down. And then we continue with the friction washer. Then you got the star washer and then the cupped washer. Okay, star washer, cupped washer. And this actually fits inside that cupped washer. So you need to make sure you get that inside the cupped washer like that. And then we got the spring. Then we got this guy who will actually fit over the top of the shaft, is why that one's a little bit bigger. That one will bottom out on the bottom of the shaft, but they're the same diameter, so if you keep them even, it all works out well. Standard washer. God, there's a lot of stuff on this, isn't there? Then you got your 7/16 inch half nut. Sure I get those nice and even, and if you twist it a little bit, it seems to center everything. So There we go, and I'll get that tightened down, then I'll put the second half washer on there as a lock nut. Not a washer, but okay, I got that one tightened up, and I'm going to go ahead, and I did tighten that all the way because I like my windows nice and snug and not flop around while I'm driving. I like to have them stay where they're set at, and get that on there. It doesn't take a lot of torque to tighten those half nuts. You can strip them pretty easy. Okay, I put one of the screws in. I got the little locking plate here, and it's got a little seal behind it that is built into the rubber, and we'll get that one started. I did dap those holes, so those should go in. I'm going to go get a screwdriver of a little bit different size. This one, I believe, will be too big for those. Yeah. Okay, I got those tightened down, and those are a chrome head screw, but the wood comes across right here, so you don't see anything down in here. That's why I didn't have the guy polish all of this. The wood goes across, but anyway, this guy goes on here, and it's going to lock down against that plate. This has a little lock washer on it, and it won't come off of there. So anyway, you got to make sure. I assume it won't. Mine won't come off there, but it should have a little lock washer on there. And that adjusts it to just right the distance so this thing will not rattle around. And I'm very careful. That one may be a little bit too big. Okay. Tighten down real good. It doesn't flop around, and it does lock the window in. So I'm going to leave that like that, and I might stretch and move the rubber around a little bit so it forms in real good. Then I'll see if it pops out any place when I open and close the window, and if it does, I'll put some glue on it. And we'll ever set. Okay, I've had this thing sitting on there with that wheel, that window sealed in there, and that helps form that gasket. But to get it in the door, I'll have to take this back off, but I wanted to make sure it was pulled down and was latched properly and was where it was going to fit, so I'm going to go ahead and take that off. Okay, let me see here. I'm working on the back doors, and these plates go on here, and I had these sent out, and I had them polished. I believe they're stainless steel. And these little things in the middle here, they get a brass washer on them, and anyway, that goes on there, and then we get these little bitty screws that hold it on, and one goes in there. And one goes in here. And you need to make sure you get those middle things started there. They go through, and there's not much tolerance on them. Get that screw started, and you want to make sure it's on there correctly. Pops on down like that. And you don't have to over tighten those. Alright, and that's all smeared up with grease and oil. I'll clean that off after I put it in the door. These get connected, and I'm working on the right front door, and you'll notice there is a tab on it here, and that's for the locking mechanism right here. Fits in that slot. So anyway, there is a left and a right to these, and the swoop in this is you have it on the door like that. The swoop goes up, as you can see right here. And there is a left and a right on those. This was put on there, which I just have these little felt sleeves. But the guy that bought this car originally was real crazy about the noise implications of stuff. So I have these sleeves made, and then I just slip them on there. Like so. And I pull those on down. Like so. Like so. So anyway, that'll keep them from rattling around. And on these things, I find that if you lubricate, you need to lubricate a couple places here. I'm going to lubricate this place. And I'm going to put a little lubrication in around this edges back here. And they got these oil holes, so I'm going to go ahead and oil it up real good. My wife always loves it when I do this in the Rathskeller, but if you put your it gets in there and it's keyed, so it goes in one way, and I'm kind of screwing that in there. Then you can take it and you can exercise it a little bit, and you can see this one is a little stiff. I exercise that, work that oil in there. And I work this a little bit and back and forth and make sure I get the lubrication down in it. Like so. And you can see it's popping back real freely now, so I can unscrew that and take that on out of there. But anyway, this is the one to the left door, and I'm working on the right door, and I've already oiled it. Okay, you notice this one that had that locking tab on there I had mentioned. This one here is a rear door, and you'll notice it is missing the locking tab on here. So you've got a right and a left, and this is for the right door. But because of the position of this, and this goes up, so obviously the door lock goes down, it'll only fit in one direction. So that's going to go across there. And okay, I'm working on the right-hand door here, and you can see if you don't get this swoop right, this would be the back of the right-hand door, and it goes down. Otherwise, you will not be able to get the door motor up in there. The frame of the door motor won't go up. And anyway, what happens here is the spring washer, and it's got a little flare to it, goes on first. Then that goes on the arm. Then there's another one of these flared washers. They're kind of bubbly. And that goes on like that. And I'm going to have to see where the hole is in this thing, but you got to press it together. Hole's right there. If you get it, okay. And I'll clip those off. My wife loves it when I get all those pieces all over the place in the Rathskeller. And there is a right and a left on these, both the lock mechanism. Okay, I got that dressed pretty well. You won't be able to get at that, but that goes the door handle from the outside pushes on that. We went over that, and this has got the lock in it. So anyway, we'll get that in the door. Okay, I got the latch in here and I got it started, and you can see that I've got the 3 screws started there. These are a chrome screw. They kind of have a rounded head to them. They get a little beveled chrome plated washer, And there's 4 of those around there. You can see that's still quite loose. And I wanted to get them all started. Now on the bottom one there's a flat, and it's completely flat headed. It does not have the bevel, and it goes down here at the bottom. Push that in a little bit, and I usually, that's a centering screw I think, so I tend to tighten it down first, and then I kind of rotate through them and tighten them down. Okay, on the other end, and by the way, the control arm, if you can feel it up there, it goes under the lip and should ride up underneath there. If you can see any of it, you got the wrong one on there, and now would be the time to change them around if you got them backwards. I find I mark most of this stuff, but then I get it cad plated. Oh, these are a little pointy headed screw, and they've got a standard washer on them, and there's 3 of them there that hold that plate on. And I'm going to go ahead and get that one started. And I can see where these screws were last time. They were right about there, so I'm going to go ahead and snug those down about where they look like they were, and then we'll go ahead and tighten them. Sort of like that. Okay, this is the key to a Cloud 3, and this is the door lock. You can see on here there's a thin brass nut, and there's 2 angle pieces, and they're keyed and they'll fit on either way, but you put them on with the flat of the door, and the Yale goes to the top on these, so you have to get the bottom lined up in a certain way or you can't get the stuff on and off. If you got it a little bit off like that, you can't get it where you need to, so you need to get it right at the right spot. That's why you have to have the key in it. When you get the nut on there and you get it through the door, of course that one goes on the inside, and the chromed one, I got these re-chromed, is why they were a little bit rough before, but anyway, that goes on so it makes it a flat surface to put your nut in against. And after you get your nut in, there's a hole in there, and we're going to put this pin in like that. I'm afraid you're not going to be able to see that real well when I put it on the door, but okay, just to explain a little bit more on the lock, I've got the key in here, and that's the position it comes out. It won't come out in other positions. I've got the Yale, so the key comes out, and the Yale goes to the top side of the door. Now this back here, there is a left and a right, and that has to go towards the back of the door. If it goes here, there's no stop for it. You can feel the stop. This one happens to go in the left door. I showed you the right one before. Okay, there's the key from the outside. You can see the Yale is up. And let me move around here to the other side. After you put that in, the second step is the lock, and that's, you know, that's not a bad picture there. You can see the latch inside there, and the little tab goes towards the back of the door as I talked about, so that's all tightened down and ready to go. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do here is, besides adjust the camera a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and put this side trim in. This piece of trim you can see it goes on the other side. I'm working on the right hand door, but it has a different bevel to it, so it won't fit. But there is a left and a right on them. And I'm going to go ahead and pop this down. This goes in the holes there, and I can tell where these went, exactly where they went, so I got them back in the same exact spots, and I'm going to carefully, without scratching my new paint, get it lined up, and it goes just a tad from the end. And if you get this in, and by the way, there is a slant to these, and there's a left and right, and there's a rear door on them, so you got to get the right one. And I think I want to be just a tad that way, about like that. I'm going to put that in after I'm done, but this thing just basically pops on down there. Just like so. And this will go in the end there, like so. And I may have to tap that down a little bit. You can tap it a little bit. I got a little bit too much at that end, but I'm going to tap on that end with a rubber hammer a little bit and just tap it down just a tad. But okay, right here you can see I've got the door unit. This is out of the left side, but this will set in there like that. And this, I was trying to explain this, and it's kind of hard. That rides on that, and as you push it in, it pushes it. And you got to get the right clearance, so what I do is I take this and I put it in the door a couple of times until I just have snug clearance. It just starts pushing on that. Then I put the trim on it, the little piece of trim on the end, and I go ahead and tighten this down because you can't do it after you get it in the door. But these are someplace around 0.5 to 0.64, 0.69. They vary on the door and how this goes in. So anyway, that's the adjustment on those. Okay, I'm getting ready to put these end pieces in here, and first of all, I'm going to just slide that in there gently. This has a half nut on it that locks the tab in back that this thing needs to line up on, that it pushes on, so you'll see the tab after you get up in it. And it's got a couple of, I think they're 3BA bolts with a washer that go through and hold them on. And once again, you won't be able to see that when I get on the inside. You might be able to see a couple of my kittens in the shot too. Here, there's my kittens. My wife saved those. Okay, as part of a test here, I'm just going to turn, and that is locked, and see I push the button in over here and it spins freely to let the door open. I'll also test it with a knob over on the inside.